some time to incorporate them because our dog, Shadow, weighs 80 pounds, and she's run off other cats that have come around like they were. Right.
Welcome to the New Orleans Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following a few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the New Orleans Humanist Perspective. My name is Charlotte Klasson, President of the Board of Directors for the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, which is the sponsor of this program, and I will be your host for today's show. First, if you would like to know more about NOSHA, please visit our website, www.nosha.info, and you can learn more about our upcoming activities and events. I'd like to introduce our guest. First, Dave Schultz has recently retired after 25 years as an associate professor of biology at Nicholls State University. His areas of research, interest, and expertise were in fish ecology and evolutionary biology. He was a founding member of NOSHA and has served as NOSHA's vice president, website manager, and membership coordinator for many years. He was also the faculty advisor for the Secular Student Alliance at Nicholls State University. And with him is Connie Schultz, also a founding member of NOSHA, who retired 5 years ago after 22 years with the Louisiana Office of Public Health STD HIV program, initially as an HIV natural history case investigator and then as a field epidemiologist. Connie served as both NOSHA's treasurer and as the newsletter editor for many years simultaneously. They reside in Thibodaux with their 2 cats and a dog and spend their time renovating their 120-year-old house and tending a large garden in between traveling, which most recently was a fantastic trip to the United Kingdom. So welcome both back to our show. To set the stage, this program is in kind of a recognition of the fact that both Dave and Connie have retired from the NOSHA board after 19 years of service. So they were at the founding of NOSHA, and we thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to kind of reflect on the history and the evolution of NOSHA and to get your perspective and thoughts on that. So I thought we would go back kind of a little bit to the very beginning, that if each of you might briefly tell us about what made you non-religious, what that first moment was, and what that was like. So,
go ahead.
Well, I kind of had an epiphany, I guess, in my early 20s. But, I was raised in a nice home in a small town in South Texas, and we weren't religious. We didn't say grace at the table, but we went to church every Sunday, and I went to Sunday school and vacation Bible school. We were Lutherans from a German family.
Oh, okay.
But it never really interested me a lot. And then after I got out of high school, the more I read about other cultures and other civilizations, etc., I thought, how can their religions be wrong? And this one right? That was kind of what it was. It was, I think, I was telling Dave, it occurred to me that I was using a term that I didn't learn till later on, but I was using critical thinking, I think. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that was until I was taught that by a NOSHA member many years later who taught philosophy at UNO.
Yeah.
But but that's what it was.
Okay. And
just that.
Yeah.
Well, my parents weren't religious. I wouldn't say they were atheists, but we were not churchgoers. Right. And my parents separated when I was fairly young, and my mother remarried when I was in junior high, and my stepfather was a fundamentalist and insisted on all of our combined families, all the kids, going to church. And initially it was a Baptist church. And I honestly tried to get into it, and I just couldn't. He gave in at one point and said I could go to any church of my choosing, and I went around and tried other churches, and then I found the Unitarian Church through my junior high best friend. His parents were Unitarians.
Okay. When
my Baptist stepfather heard that I was going to the Unitarian Church on Sundays, that was the end of church going for me. I didn't have to go anymore. If I can't go to the one that I want, then I'm not going at all.
Okay. And how old were you when
that was? I was about 16.
Oh, okay, so a teenager.
Yeah. So, and then I've always been a science nerd, and of course I went into biology. And once I understood the logic of evolution, and there was no looking back for me on religion. So
okay. Well, so often that is one of the things we a lot of us don't talk about it very much anymore, as far as the origin story, I guess, of people's non-religion. But I knew that that would be part of kind of some. It could have been that it was right before you found NOSHA, but it's very clear it was very early in your life. Yeah. Tell us what you remember about the first gathering of what was to become NOSHA. If you remember the atmosphere and what people talked about and what was important at the time.
He was there. I was a couple of meetings into it before I before I learned about it.
So about 15 of us got together. We were organized all through our connection with the Council for Secular Humanism. Okay. I was subscribing to Free Inquiry and the Skeptical Inquirer, and they contacted me and asked and said somebody in the New Orleans area was interested in getting a secular humanist group going. Would I be interested in participating in some way? And I checked yes and sent it back, and I got a phone call saying we're going to be meeting for the first time. And I think it was at Barnes & Noble.
I think so.
It was either at Barnes & Noble or Borders, and they were both there on Veterans within a few blocks of each other. Yeah. And I could look back and see exactly which one it was now, but I can't recall. Yeah. But anyway, so it was about 15 people who didn't know each other. I had seen a couple people before at other meetings. When they had secular people come in to speak, and I recognized a few people from that, but otherwise, no. And it was just, well, what do you do? How do you get this started? And if it hadn't been for the Council for Secular Humanism saying, here's what to do at a first get-together. Right. And the first thing you want to do is decide who's going to be the president and vice president, so you have some structure to go from there. And Harry Greenberger stepped up, and nobody else was saying, I'll be president, but Harry said, I've been an organizer all my life, and I'll be president until somebody else wants to be. Okay. That's what he...
Right.
And we went from there and started having, one of the members there was a Unitarian, and said, I think we could probably arrange to have meetings at the Unitarian Church. Oh, okay. And we did. Our second meeting was at the Unitarian Church, and we met there for probably a month. It was two or three meetings. Back then, we were meeting every other week.
Right.
And that was A lot of people were really interested and wanted to be there every other week, and we were like that until Katrina. So,
and then right after that, right after probably the second meeting, there was an article in the Times-Picayune on the religion page with this picture of Harry Greenberger and this organization that had just shot up. And I read that article, and I said, that's what I am. I'm a secular humanist. I didn't even know it.
Oh, okay. So I
had not heard that term before.
And I was wondering when you mentioned the secular humanism, so I wonder if anybody would know.
Then I went to the next meeting, and that's when I met Dave, and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Harry was always one to try to get his name or NOSHA's name in the paper.
Oh yeah,
right.
And he did right away.
Right.
It's like we've got this new group, and he got a picture of himself and the whole 9 yards.
I was about to say that Harry made that quite or at least he was very good at that and had a real sense of needing to do it. Whereas a lot of people might eventually get around to it. I think Harry probably had that right away. Just knew that he needed to get the name out there.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because one of the parts of thinking that this would be a good show and knowing that Harry would really approve is to know that so often, a lot of groups don't make it 20 years, and just because things kind of, people just get really tired or our core group moves away. And so that's what made this kind of intriguing, is to say that so often we just don't have the opportunity to talk to people who were there at the beginning. So many people have already, they had moved on and things. So that's what was interesting. I guess was there any political climate, any issue that had stood out to anyone, or was it kind of y'all were just not a political minded group as far as legislatures?
I don't think there was much.
Not politics so much as issues. I mean, it was right around the same time as the right to die things. Dr. Kevorkian was in the news around that time, and all of that sort of thing. So, and that stayed an issue with us, the right to die and all of that sort of thing. It's a big part of, and always church-state separation has been a big issue, but not
that there was something just happening in the state that made it stand out.
That initial group, we're all subscribers to some publication from the Council for Secular Humanism. So everybody was interested in humanist issues.
The death penalty was also one of the issues that we talked about earlier.
Okay, so kind of a social justice kind of
So if there hadn't been that publication, we probably wouldn't have known about each other to get together.
And of course, they had been around much longer, but yet that's what did it. Okay. Well, that is really amazing, because now I'm not sure. I mean, yes, there are a list of people who probably are on several of the same lists, but finding everybody without the internet, using phone calls or postcards or whatever, that's amazing, and it stuck. And I guess it probably it was you and Harry and some other. How many formed that core board as far as who were kind of the organizers to keep the group together?
The first board of directors
was it?
There was probably only
6 people, 10 people,
6 or 8 people. It wasn't very many.
Okay.
Right. A couple of people are still around.
I didn't think I had time to be on the board for about the first 6 months. And then after we got the first Darwin Day organized, then I, and I helped with that. Connie helped with that. And sort of we became the kind of the prime movers.
Because we were the ones who volunteered from the beginning to do stuff. Do things. And so,
Did you initially just start out as a like a group that would have conversations just amongst yourselves, or did you try to bring in speakers and things from the very beginning, or?
We tried to bring in speakers from the very beginning.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't just a discussion group.
They were initially local people who wanted to speak on a topic, but then very quickly we moved out from there and got people from the Council for Secular Humanism and American Atheists, and we had people in right away. And I think during that time, local groups were relatively rare, and American Atheists, American Humanist Association, they had funds to send people out to speak
right.
to speak to local groups,
right? To help it thrive, kind of, and give it an identity.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. You said, did we have discussions? We had a regular first and third weekend meeting. Initially, it was Sundays,
right?
And first and third. And one was always a discussion, and the other one was always a speaker. So
I see. So you were able to kind of have both things,
that's
so
right.
you'd know what to plan for.
And because it was on Sunday afternoon, we caught the Unitarian crowd. They would come out of church and then come over to NOSHA for the discussion or the talk.
Oh, okay. So
and
kind
early
of
on, we started meeting at the Smith Library out on what street is that on? I can't remember.
It's on Canal.
Yeah.
Canal and Harrison.
Canal and Harrison.
Right.
Correct.
And
yes.
there's a Catholic church right behind that library, so it was always fun to see them leaving as we were pulling in.
Yeah. Well, did you feel like there was a particular vision or something that kind of held it together? Did Harry or I guess as a group maybe you formed kind of a vision for NOSHA at the time? Because that period was a very, the early part of an organization
in those
different.
first couple months we came up with, NOSHA's, statement of purpose.
Okay.
Can I read it?
Sure. Yes, that was from that time period. I didn't know that.
That was early on. That was one of the things Harry said we needed to have. We needed to have a mission statement. And NOSHA was formed to provide an opportunity for like-minded people to meet and exchange ideas and promote awareness of secular humanist viewpoints in the community. We strive to make the public aware of the importance of separation of church and state, to oppose the teaching of creationism and other religious exercises in public schools, and to provide a voice of reason when superstition is presented in the media. So
that's a really heavy duty.
Yeah.
It's certainly for a first effort kind of.
It took several drafts before we got to that.
Even early on, we were close with the ACLU. In fact, the local coordinator of the ACLU at the time, kind of secretly, was a NOSHA member. Oh. We didn't advertise him,
right?
but he was. And was very friendly to us.
And it was Joe Cook.
Yeah, Joe Cook, and he even got us on board with an early lawsuit in which. So that we didn't have to pay sales tax, like the Daughters of Charity didn't have to pay sales tax. And that sort of thing.
I think I have a memory of that. I've run across that in some of the just things that we have out there. Okay.
Because at the time when we first started filming this program, for example, we had to buy the videotapes that we copied the program onto, and I used to have to go out and pick them up at a place way out there by the airport. And because of that lawsuit, I didn't have to pay the sales tax on them. Just little things like that that were important.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's. I guess that's what's interesting is NOSHA has had some very. It seems like really. I don't know whether it could be a little luck or just being in the right place at the right time. Things that kind of solidified success or at least notoriety. And I guess. But pre-Katrina, which of course is its own period of time, I guess, was there anything that ever you felt that things got a little shaky, or did it always feel like it was successful? Like, was there any moments that stood out as a turning point for the organization?
There were some social conflicts early on. Nothing
fatal.
Nothing that seemed like it would undermine the group as a whole. I know there were differences, the statement of organizing atheists is like herding cats.
Sure.
A lot of people are atheists but have very different worldviews in other ways. And most of the people associated with NOSHA, even now, would probably call themselves liberals, progressives, something like that. Yeah. We did have some pretty die-hard conservatives initially who took issue with NOSHA things, and people left the group over that. Yeah.
So that was just a standard thing that happens, and that happened to NOSHA. Okay.
Yeah, and it's happened since. You know that.
Sure. Yeah. People just finding that it doesn't quite speak to them. Yes, that's true. I guess one thing that I thought would be nice for us to discuss just for a little bit, and it would. We never get a chance to talk about it, maybe because we are focusing on the local group. Do y'all keeping up with the national focus of non-belief and some of the issues out there, and over the time from the pre-Katrina, since Katrina, the national attitudes and community issues to communities like ours? Has that ever stood out as something that
it comes up because of social media? I see things posted all the time about someone doing. An atheist doing, an invocation at a city council meeting somewhere and that sort of thing. And I was remembering with Dave when we were last in Colorado a couple of years ago, we noticed we were visiting family in Grand Junction, and we went to a street fair one evening, and there was a booth at that street fair of the local Humanist Association.
Western Colorado.
Okay.
So that was there. And outside of... what town I mentioned?
Estes Park.
Estes Park. There's a stretch of highway that is sponsored by freethinkers or Rocky Mountain Freethinkers or one of those groups. And so we see that around.
And kind of see how other groups are doing it. And
there's that.
And do any of the national, all the groups, I guess, kind of solidified over the past decade what they stand for and kind of what they're going to tackle. And
that always... I've wondered about the national group since the very beginning, and I've asked the organizers of national groups when we've met with them, why isn't there more collaboration amongst the national groups? Why doesn't the American Humanist Association and the Council for Secular Humanism have a joint annual meeting where they can talk about the things they have in common, the things they can push together? Why don't American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation get together and do, and nobody has a good answer. I think the answer is every one of those organizations is driven by a major personality who doesn't want to relinquish any power.
Right, and then that could very well be something that is kind of a scary part of anything. You want your distinct message, your distinct event, your distinct identity.
But there's so much that they're working on together that they could probably do more. Sean Faircloth was trying to organize more.
Secular Coalition.
The Secular Coalition. And that really hasn't move forward.
It's done some nice distinctive things, but you're right, it didn't take off maybe the way it would seem that it could have. And so that is an interesting issue. A lot of people don't talk about that very much.
From the national organizations, though, they're out there more than they used to be. I think the Freedom from Religion Foundation has even taken on filing legal suits now and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
That's sort of new. And I should say right here, one of my favorite things, I watch MSNBC at night, and I just love that Ron Reagan does an ad for Freedom from Religion Foundation on MSNBC.
Yes, that was always it's always been a very important, and I guess to see it in the media, which a lot of people don't. We're still kind of in some ways still kind of in the shadows. We've had our moments where
and I've seen David Silverman from American Atheists do news, like on CNN and things.
When he was on there, when he was on there,
so
that's true.
Are getting some press,
right. Well, I guess bringing it back to kind of from a national to a state thing, as far as being in NOSHA, do you feel there's something that the local or state non-theist should focus on? Has there been something that's always that you thought, well, if you're going to focus on it, this would be an issue for Louisiana?
Well, in the state, it continues to be, science education not being blocked and keeping,
true
church-state out of separation.
I really think
schools.
Somebody needs to go after, and whether, I think Joe Cook was doing it in part, but I don't think the ACLU has really followed up since Joe left to put it to the Louisiana Family Forum. The Louisiana Family Forum is, in my opinion, an evil organization, and they have political control of Louisiana. And somebody should be pointing out their flaws and showing that their leaders are as bad as any of the other religious leaders around.
Sure.
Yeah,
okay, that's a very interesting point, because I guess, and the ACLU would certainly have the framework to do that, to talk about actual legal issues that should be addressed, and not just kind of, we'll get around to it. So that's a good point, and I know that sometimes it is that leading a secular organization trying to keep people focused, especially in this part of the state. Because we have, festivals, we have a lot of things that, make us, enjoy where we live, and yet, trying to stay focused on these harder issues.
There should be somebody in Baton Rouge lobbying as hard as the Louisiana Family Forum does against every one of their issues.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That is a good point, that our non-theists in the state should think that would be something worth looking into.
We did have, an active member on our board was Michael Malick.
Right.
And Michael Malick was a lobbyist for the ACLU, and he was there.
And he was aware of the religious issues.
Doing exactly that, but it's not being done now that I know of.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, very good point. That is a good serious point at this part of the show. I guess as kind of going to the end of our program, what has been the most meaningful as far as, spending 19 years doing anything? I think there are a lot of people who wouldn't know what that's like except from a career perspective, and yet to stick with something for so long. What was meaningful to you over these years? And
well, of course, the lifetime friendships we've made. We have a few friends that really are part of our lives. Just because of that, and each other. We met.
That is true. What year did you get married?
We only were married. We've been married for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
It was after I retired. That's when we said.
Okay. So just
because I was still living over here, that whole time.
Right. You were still in the New Orleans area.
We were just going back and forth for all those years.
Okay.
But but I think knowing that all of these national organizations do exist, and seeing there has been an increase in secularization in this country. There really is. And
awareness.
And just being part of this organization has made me aware of that too.
I'm proud that we got NOSHA going, and basically it's gotten off the ground, and it stayed going.
I
think that's meaningful.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
When you were mentioning to me, when we talked about these issues earlier today, you were pointing out that you're glad to see a lot of younger people showing up now.
Right.
And I think that this is promising.
And maybe building on a community, which I think we all could agree.
And I think there are a lot more of those young people out there in the community, and maybe this will.
Right, and having a place where you can have like-minded people. I think so often people who are non-theists, non-believers, finding community can be really daunting, and it's wonderful when people can say, I have something that's just as meaningful as someone who finds that in their church. Right. Well, I guess we're kind of at the very end, but I'm so glad we were able to have this kind of a little historical retrospective on what you've seen happen with NOSHA, and kind of bring back some of these memories for our show.
It was fun.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful, and tune in to us again for another show, and thank you for being our guest.